Okay, hello, how are you?
Hello.
Hello.
Two of our playwrights and Amy, my partner in crime, our two partners in crime here at Venus Theater. Let's just do some introductions to start out. Whoever wants to jump in first, go ahead.
Moriah, go.
Okay. Well, my name is Moriah Joy. I am a playwright from Richmond. Pronouns are she, they. And I have been writing plays for 8 years now.
Nice. Great.
Faye Sholiton from Cleveland. Right now I'm wintering in Arizona, and my pronouns are she, her, and it's lovely to be here. Thank you for inviting me.
It's great to have you both. Amy, do you want to say anything?
Oh, sure. I'm Amy. Amy Rhodes. I am Deb's sidekick, as she said. So, Venus board member, and I wear many theater hats, but not playwright. So I am in awe of both of you, all three of you, actually. So there you go.
And I'm Deb Randall, the founder of Venus Theater. We want to talk to Faye and Moriah today about their two plays that are going to be included in our anthology. So either one of you can go first, sort of tell us the title. And I guess the first thing the question is, what called you to become a playwright? So sort of say the title of your play, and we'll go into the first question, which is what called you to become a playwright?
Well, I guess my call came earlier because I've been at it 30 years. And I would say probably this was always in my blood in some way or another. Do you want longer than that? Just like a couple of sentences about the beginnings. My mother always wrote parodies and songs, and so I saw the world in those terms, and writing tributes, things like that. And I think that in the weirdest way, I gravitated to it. I did not know I was writing dialogue and seeing the world in that way. But in graduate school or undergraduate school, I did a summer abroad in France, and I took a class in theater of the absurd. And I wrote for my final paper a play. I had a waiting room with Estragon and Vladimir and Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and my reader and myself. And I failed the paper. He said, "Vous vous moquez de moi ou de mon cours? Either you're making fun of me or my course." And he made me go home and write another paper in September. So, but it was my first failure as a playwright. And I think it really, set a very low bar for what I had to scale, like listen to what people are looking for. But things that I would see just theatrically in my head, that once I finally decided to do it, it seemed like the most normal thing in the world.
Lovely. How about you, Moriah?
Well, the title of my piece is called Tearing Out My Hair and Other Ways to Deal with Life. And I found playwriting through acting. I had kind of always enjoyed writing, but I didn't have good English teachers when I was growing up who were very encouraging in my writing styles. Thankfully, I had a wonderful drama teacher she and I still work together today, and I absolutely adore her, who's really been encouraging me. And I really found my footing in playwriting when I had this one person where we had an ongoing friendship for over a year, and I just had been strung along, and I was like, you know what? Either we're in this together or we're not. So I wrote this whole big speech out that I was going to give, and I read it to my roommate, and she was like, "Oh, that's so good. You should turn it into a play." And I was like, "You know what? I will." And I did. And now I'm here 8 years later. It's wild.
That's incredible. Isn't it interesting how it's never a straight road?
Never.
Just when you think you're falling off the path, you're finding it. I just find that it's sort of become a theme as I'm interviewing people.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Did you begin in a different medium? We may have already answered this, but do you want to speak to that at all?
I did, because I had no medium in college. I started out as a French teacher, and I became a journalist when my kids were small. So that was something I could do on my own time. And I worked for many publications for about 10 years, but for one of them, I got to cover theater. And looking back on it, I had no idea what I was talking about, but that, nobody ever bothered me because I did so much research before I ever reviewed a show. I interviewed the people who were in it, and I, watched rehearsals because I was allowed in, which was really unusual, but I loved it so much. It was clear I was a sponge. And over time, I discovered that the people on the stage were having a better time than I was. So at my 10-year anniversary with the newspaper, I went in and I said, I'm going to take a leave of absence. And the editor said, what would you do? And I said, well, I thought I'd write a play. I fully expected her to say, what will we do without you? And she didn't. So she said, that's always been my dream. And 17 years later, she retired, and I was her mentor in playwriting. And I've been doing plays ever since 1994 when I quit the job. So that's my journey to playwriting, falling in love with the theater, being behind the scenes, watching what gets done in the kitchen. And in Cleveland, we had Gerald Friedman, who was the director of Great Lakes Theater. He allowed me in everywhere. So I watched people like Elizabeth France and Hal Holbrook rehearse together, and watched George Abbott direct in a rehearsal room when he was 100, celebrating his birthday in Cleveland in a retrospective. So I really got to see what can happen when wonderful minds collaborate. And I wanted some of that. Didn't get all of that, but I certainly have had a wonderful time ever since.
I think there's nothing like being in the room. That's incredible. Incredible. How about you?
Well, I came by way of acting. I went to Virginia Commonwealth University, and I got my undergrad in theater with a focus in performance. And then I found out in my sophomore year that I had a lot of health issues. And so trying to do acting full time wasn't going to be a viable career in the way that I thought it would be. And then I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll go into teaching. And as much as I love teaching, my patience for children is great in small bursts. God love teachers who can do it full time. I am not there yet. I have not been granted that patience yet. So I was like, I guess we'll do the playwriting and directing thing. And that's how it's come. And it's been really an amazing journey, especially this year. I'm just absolutely astounded at the reception that I've received with my artwork, and I'm blown away.
So you direct as well?
I do. I have currently I'm in production for 3 different shows that I'm writing and directing 2 of them and writing 1 of them. And my partner is I'm allowing him to do the direction on it, because I was like, I need you to take something off my plate here. But it's a 1-person show, so I'm acting in it. So
I think it's less, but in some ways it's more. I'll tell you firsthand there.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, good for you. Good for you. I think I've done 8 solo shows. So
Wow.
if you need a shoulder to cry on, call me anytime.
I'll take you up on that.
Yeah, seriously. So now let's talk about your monologues. Yes.
Well, you go first this time.
Okay.
Let's let Moriah go first. Good idea.
Thank you. So the monologue that I wrote is from a character by the name of Kia, and her monologue really focuses on just the frustrations of being a minority in an office workplace, of the little passive aggressive things that happen when you're a person of color that people don't necessarily realize take place, and the frustrations that come with trying to just be treated like a human being and get your job done, but nobody seeing your worth in that. And Kia's monologue was actually the jumping off point for tearing out my hair and other ways to deal with life. It's a monologue collection show it follows 9 different people who work in various customer service positions. And I had just had a day where I needed to rant about the job that I was at, and Kia's monologue took shape, and it has taken shape and is becoming more and more polished. And I'm just really thankful that it has resonated with so many people. I've gotten to perform it live a couple of times myself, and the response to it's been really beautiful.
That's great. Great. Faye?
My monologue is called The Family Zoom, and it is set during COVID. And I think all populations were affected in tremendous ways. But what bothered me, because I was now in the age group where I was at risk, at greater risk, and being in Arizona when most of my stuff was in Cleveland, including the pieces of me that are all of my memories. My kids aren't here or either place, but we were suddenly dependent on Zoom. And those of you who were not here for our pre-show, I hate technology. I don't trust it. And if I duck, you'll see a light bulb over my head because I couldn't get rid of the effect that somehow had been transferred to my screen. But I was thinking, if I were trying to communicate with my kids, which we did on Zoom, it was always awkward. And I was thinking of my friend Dorothy Silver, with whom I worked the last several years. She was already 90, and I wanted to write something for her that reflected the kinds of things she was telling me about communicating with her family during Zoom. And that's all she was in a 1-bedroom apartment in Cleveland. Her kids were around the country, but they were faithful and calling every week. And I got to listen to some of the conversations, and her face just lit up. And I could see that was the moment of joy. And I wanted to figure out what you would say. And I wrote the part for her. I said, "Do you mind if I write you a monologue?" She said, "No, not at all." And I wrote The Family Zoom. And at first she called me, she said, "I can't laugh about anything right now." And I said, "Okay, no worries." I wrote it and it'll be there. And about 6 months later, I showed it. She said, "Show me that monologue." And I did. And she performed it. And it was the last thing that she performed. She passed away a couple months after that. So we had that as a performance that was logged into the theater where I was on the Playwrights unit at Obama Theater. And that became part of an evening of works by the resident playwrights at Obama. So that's the background of it. The reason for writing it was purely to hear Dorothy's voice do this. And that was the background of it.
That's so beautiful.
That's beautiful.
I found in putting together the anthology, and I've said this, I think, on every interview, so I'm really repeating myself, but one of the glories of it was deciding the chapters. Didn't have to do the canon, in those styles. I was able to create the chapters in a way that I, as a producer and director, view them. And one of the chapters that sort of appeared to me was biography. And this has been incredible because over the 35 years, I've gotten so many submissions, and a lot of times the biographies can read like a Wikipedia entry, and I think that's the problem in a way of telling women's stories, that there's so much exposition before you get to, because it's not in the canon, it's not understood. So we're always having to kind of explain ourselves before we get into it, or that's a trap, I guess. Anyway, this has allowed us to visit women who exist, and just the other day I interviewed Mickey, Marie Leaner from the Jane movement, from a nursing home, and in Paula's play, and she talked about all the revolutionary work that she had done. And in another project, I was able to interview Gertrude Ederle just a month before she died. She was 98 years old. So I think, Faye, what you've done is just incredible. Can you tell us more about her and who she was and what she meant to you?
Yes, Dorothy was married to a man named Reuben Silver, and they were sweethearts since college. He fell for her, and he was a bit older, so he had to wait for her to catch up. They settled in Cleveland, and they were on the boards in Cleveland for 50 years. Her most famous credit is Shawshank Redemption. There's a moment in Shawshank when the landlady takes, I can't remember, James, whatever the actor was who ends up hanging himself. She walks him upstairs and shows him the room. So she's got about 3 seconds in that, because that was filmed in Ohio. She was brilliant, and she was insightful. And I'm jumping ahead in my story, but I founded a theater company. It's going on 13 years. And toward the last couple of years, I worked with Dorothy quite a bit. She directed for me. She acted for me. One of the plays that, just to give you a sense of her humor or our relationship, when I called her and asked her to read a two-hander called Oh God, she read it and I said, well, are you interested in directing? She said, no, I thought you were asking me to play God. So, that was the kind of stuff that we had. And when we didn't always see the things the same way on the first round, by the end, I just loved having her wisdom in every beat of everything that we did. And she was that for so many people in Northeast Ohio. We just adored her. Reuben passed away first, and she was alone, I think, about 5 years. I'm going to get that wrong, but she continued her work and had the two of them had every male and female role, particularly later years, that you could have had. And if they'd gone to New York, they wouldn't have been cast as often. By staying in a smaller market, they got to do everything they wanted to do. And if both of them couldn't act, one directed and the other one acted. It was just a total marriage on the stage. That didn't go on too long. We loved her.
Oh.
Oh.
Do you want to talk? Can you talk a bit about your process? And I think this is a little bit different for every playwright, and it's just fascinating to me. Moriah, we'll start with you. What is your process when you write a play?
I think for me, I am fascinated with the what ifs and the untold versions of stories. I feel like the first show that I feel like I really wrote past the one that inspired the monologue in the beginning, I examined women's point of view on war and violence in America in the last century and a half, because we always hear about women who are going into service, or we'll hear about men who are going into service, but we never hear about the effects of what it does at home and the people who are left behind. I've focused on war brides in Vietnam, because their stories are not told, and how they had their lives completely uprooted, coming to a new country in the middle of upheaval and the civil rights and everything going on with that. And then focusing on Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and how there are queer people who are trying to be a part of the military, but the military doesn't want them. And so what does that dichotomy look like when you are so passionate about preserving country and the country doesn't want you? So I really try to focus on where can we find the stories that haven't been told, looking at this from a different angle. And that's why with Tearing Out My Hair, it's what if we had the opportunity to say whatever we wanted to in working in these customer service positions? If we really could just let the curtain fly and be like, this is my life. Please just give me a moment of break for 2 seconds. I am doing my best. Because there are so often times in life that we don't grant each other the same grace that people are going through. You never know what somebody is going through, and just allowing them that moment to be like, hey, maybe I shouldn't yell at this person. They're doing their best, having that moment of reprieve.
Got it. How about you, Faye? What is your process like?
My process will differ with every single piece, because there is a strike of information. There's something that comes through, and it just says, okay, put that in your bank, and on the day that it's ready to be revealed, it will be revealed. And so I'm interested in the warrior aspect. World War II impacted me as a baby boomer. It impacted all my friends' parents, my parents' friends. And one of my plays that I'm proudest of is called VE Day. And it looks at what happened to the women who were in that generation, who had grown up in the Depression. They never had anything. They suddenly became, and when they came of age, they had money in their pockets, which they'd never had. They had the budding of careers. They danced every night at the canteens. And for many of those women, life never really was any better. after the men came home and took back the jobs and they were second-class citizens again, treated very well. And you can't deny that. But if you had dreams and then you went into this middle-class domesticity, there was something that was always nagging at you. And so what I found in my own life, not with my mother, but with friends, when I heard the eulogies at my friends' mother's funerals, as those were the happiest years of her life. And I went, whoa, if World War II can be the happiest years of your life, good God, what happened? There's that light bulb.
Lit up right when you.
I'm sorry, those of you listening to a podcast can't see the light bulb going off over my head. But if I have a new idea now, instead of raising my hand, I'll just duck my head so you can see I have something to add. But anyway, this all started when I was a journalist and somebody left a box of World War II newsletters that had circulated among hometown troops. And I read through them. I called my mom and she said, well, if Dad had those, I would have known about it. In the second newsletter, there was my dad's name. And so it was about all these people that I knew, either through their children or because my parents knew them. And that was the play that came out of it, looking at, women in that generation. So yeah, you find that kernel. And the other thing is, because I was a journalist, I came from that place of interviewing. And as time wore on during the journalism career, I was asking people something and they would let their guard down and say something and they go, but you can't print that. They would be mortified. No, you can't print. So what I did was write it down and I put a big X in the margin because that signified I can't use it. But I didn't want to forget that moment. And I think that the difference between journalism and playwriting is that journalism is about what we call the truth, because she was wearing a red dress and she picked her teeth. Those things are true. They happened. I watched it. But honesty is what playwriting is about. It's what we say in the unguarded minutes, the moments that we would be mortified. And so I saw playwriting as that opportunity to flesh out those things that I felt were kind of underlying what was behind the X's and going in and looking at humanity through that lens. So I guess that's my process. It's in knowing and having done that for a good 10 years and then beyond, there were lots of stories that came up, through along with ones that I knew anyway and wanted to pursue.
That's brilliant. I love that.
It's really beautiful.
Yeah.
It makes so much sense. Honesty is playwriting and truth is journalism.
Mm-hmm.
I love that. That's a great way to frame it. Yay.
Yeah. The unguarded moments, as if no one were looking.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We were talking about Charlotte Cushman, Carolyn Gage and I, and she was talking about this role she played. The director had given her to try to chase her out of the theater world. And it was the prostitute, and I'm blanking on the show. And any actor would have thrown up their hands, but Charlotte Cushman went and studied this woman, and the woman died in front of her, and she took her clothes. And when she played it, it was all those moments of just like completely unself-conscious, and that ladies were fainting in the aisles because it was so real, such a great story. That's brilliant. I love that. So why did you choose the piece you chose to send to Venus? And I assume you had a lot of options. What about Frozen Women Flowing Thoughts connected in with your title and your subject in your piece?
Oh, thank you. For me, it's that moment of when you feel so stuck in a job that you can't move, that you don't know where to go on and what is the next step and how do I move past this racial inequity within this job, and is this going to continue in every job market that I look at? Mm-hmm. But she is very present. Kia is very connected with trying to find a way out of it. She is actively trying to dig herself out, even if the environment around her is the part that is frozen. So that was why I submitted this piece.
I love that. Migdalia Cruz said, why Frozen, Deb? Why Frozen? Why are we frozen? I feel like that's great. How about you, Faye?
Well, my character's in Cleveland in the winter. I might be too literal, but I think that certainly would hold. And, frozen in place, frozen in time, and the piece is that attempt to escape from that for a short time, and also in the space of just a couple of minutes to give her ethical will to her children and grandchildren, and acknowledge them. What, nobody wants my stuff? Are you kidding me? Your grandmother carried this across the ocean. You're going to throw it out? That kind of stuff where you can actually affect something. You can step out of your four walls. And I think that is what happens for her, because she exhales, I think, at the end. And I think that is a thaw of some sort.
Yeah, and the way it read to me,
Cathartic. Yeah, go ahead.
When I received it, I felt that pandemic thing too, and I tried to veer away from pandemic plays, but then there were yours and another one seemed very poignant to me, and that was the frozen also, sort of the collective frozen that we were just all, Yeah.
And I'm not out of it yet. I mean, my behaviors have changed. And as I say, I produce theater now, and it's so much harder. I worry about my actors. I worry about my audience. I worry because we skew older with the group that we attracted. The theater company's mission is to revive, and we have a theater tradition that was over a century old in Cleveland. And so we have people who still remember what it was, 60 years ago. And so to drag them out and to put them at risk, and what is a safe way to gather and so on. So in many ways, I think that many of us are not fully recovered from the isolation and from weighing things now. I always felt sorry for the parents during COVID who had to weigh the dangers of letting their children play basketball or go to school, or things that would have been so normal. And that's a loss. And it's something I'm not crying, I can't speak.
I want to give you my tea.
It's something that you don't fully get back. And with the push of just a small memory button, it comes back in major ways that you remember how frightened you were of things that never frightened you before.
Right. We fought to keep our space at Venus. I had a grant, and all these forces conspired against us, and it was so hard to let go. But then spending time in my own studio and figuring out this anthology was liberation. But I have been very curious about how you're doing it, because I haven't been in a theater since 2019. I've been, and so how and it has to be so different than it was before. Like, what do you do about the trust? What do you do about an audience kind of nervous about if anybody caught? Like, I have so many questions, but that's, I guess, for another interview.
It is for another call, but I think too, it's about partnerships and getting out of my comfort zone. I found a play that I absolutely loved by a Philadelphia playwright who also performs it as a solo show. It's called The Scribe. And in it, he thinks he's the guy who wrote the Bible. When they asked people to come forward after, when the Bible was getting ready to be written, and they asked all the scribes to come forward, and he forgot to step backward when they asked for a volunteer. And it's very funny and very smart. And so I paired with Case Western Reserve University with their lifelong learning. And they said, well, we don't do plays. I said, just read it. And we not only performed it live on Zoom, but the following week they got together a group of biblical scholars to respond to the play and say, you know what, he pretty much got it right. He nailed it. And so it's that kind of stuff where you go, okay, I can't do what I did. I would rather have root canal than deal with the electronic problems that I can't solve. And but each time I wanted to do something, I tried to find someone who would partner with us. So what I would bring would be the idea, the mailing list, the artistic end, and let them have their techs worry about it. And I wouldn't lose an ounce of sleep.
Wow, that's brilliant.
That's what we did for the last couple of years. We've paired with other groups to make sure, and we've done stuff on our own too, but lately that is the model. And that
theater
is
is-
instructive. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you want to chime in, Moriah, because you're also working with companies, I assume.
Yeah, so I was on the board at the Little Theater of Norfolk for 3 years during the pandemic. And so part of my responsibility, I was in the volunteer coordinator role. So it was making sure that we had people who could come to the theater, that they felt safe. And we went through a lot of discussions about, okay, well, do we require vaccines? Do we require masks? Like, what is our distancing? Do we section off seats? And so we went through all of those different stages to try to keep our community safe. And now the biggest thing that we are working on with the community is trying to just build the community up, allowing for our space to become their space in partnering with places to help them build their businesses back, to give a spotlight to places that they wouldn't necessarily have a new market of people to reach, or allowing for different playwrights and different artists to have a place for their voices to be heard where they necessarily wouldn't before. We've been working with a local nonprofit called the Underground Performing Arts Collective. Yes, sorry. I have to always remember which way.
UPAC.
UPAC, yes. Founded by the wonderful Sharon Davis Cook. And she has gone through and created this beautiful collection of artists from underrepresented communities, covering queer, BIPOC, and neurodivergent communities, to really allow for them to have a space. And so we've been trying to partner so that their mission is also in line with our mission. And so it's been maybe not in the same keeping people safe health-wise at now, but it's keeping people mentally safe and allowing for discussion surrounding everything that was going on during the pandemic, as far as isolation, as far as racial injustice, and all of those aspects. And really, how do we build our community back using theater as that tool?
So also very collaborative. That's brilliant. I was thinking, what are these two playwrights going to have in common? And it's amazing. Like,
Nothing at all.
Nothing at all. Absolutely not. Oh my gosh, when you started speaking French, I was like, oh yay. And then I was like, my French is not on par. I will not do it. I'm working on it.
No
But
rush.
definitely not theater teacher, or not French teacher level.
That was more than 50 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Oh,
Yeah.
you didn't know it at all. So what has your experience been regarding play development? We've touched on this a little, I think, with you, Moriah. But if you want to go into that, either of you can go first.
You can go first, Faye. I just spoke
Okay.
for a long time.
No. I think the Lou Gehrig of playwrights, I was the luckiest playwright in the world. I was in Cleveland. I had written a terrible play, and the director of the playwrights unit at the Cleveland Playhouse saw like a little glimmer of hope. And so he allowed me to write another play, which was what got me admitted to the unit. And I was on that unit for 15 years with people who had been writing plays for up to 20 years. So I went right from somebody who was something of a hobbyist and a lost soul to someone who had basically a master class for 15 years with wonderful, wonderful playwrights who became friends. And we had the use of, this is going to sound really ancient, of the copier and the postage meter. And so that was my publisher, and I've gotten a lot more selective about where I send plays now. But the whole idea of all the electronic submissions, I was long gone from the Playhouse by the time that happened. And I went from that wonderful experience to another 13, 14, 15 years at Obama Theater. I just stepped off the unit recently, and make room for somebody else. But, to bring in pages or to be able to use the resources of a company was so lucky. And I think that this is what other people don't have now, because most theaters don't have the resources to
Right.
develop new work that way. And I think you're looking for just pointers that I've discovered over the years. If you can form a group or if you can become part of a group, don't rule yourself out. Somebody may see something in your work that they like and feel that they can work with. You just don't know that you won't be tapped. Another thing I had, everything Dramatists Guild. I love the Guild. I was regional rep from Ohio for 7 years, and the reps, we still talk. We still do Zoom chats that I don't organize just to keep up. But we were so close, and we were out in the country working with our various constituencies, giving them quicker answers, or at least putting them in touch with the right people. And the Dramatist magazine, of all the publications I've worked for, I'm proudest of the stuff that ran in the Dramatist.
Wow.
It's your handbook. It's your everything. It focuses on career. It focuses on community, the community of actors, and on craft. And you've got a lot of stuff going in just in one organization. And when they have their regional meetings, and they're doing a lot of that now, they really branched out. When I first joined the Guild, it was New York and California. And then they added Chicago. What's going on in Chicago? Woo! And now it's the whole thing. I think even in Samoa. So now you are in this community. Find that place that you can join and be part of. Enter contests, and most of them don't cost anything. And if they do, we don't like paying for somebody to read. But that is the one place that you're assured that people will read your work. Any other time you send it, you go onto a reading pile. And I know about this now on the other end of it, producing, and follow up and make sure that if a relationship starts, we started ours, Moriah, before. When I got her email address, I wrote and said, let's exchange our scripts. Do that. You never know when she's coming to Cleveland. Yeah, do it. And I'll introduce you to everybody here. You'd be really amazed how closely knit we are. And I think particularly among women, I have not seen anything petty among one person I didn't like, but other than that, in 30 years, I would bring anybody home and give them dinner. And another thing is that within your sphere, if it's women's theater, in my case, it's a Jewish theater, there's an international organization, Alliance of Jewish Theaters. So I make sure I'm in touch. I go to their meetings, lately, most of them electronically, but those are the things you do for new play development. You are the playwright. They want you as much as they want your work. If they find out that you're not easy to deal with, forget it. It just, no matter how good the writing is, if they can't be happy to bring you in or bring your work in because of you, that's a negative. So I hope is what you meant by development, because the rest of it is what how the organizations work to help. And they all offer something different. Some are all craft, some are all career. And that's what I'm thinking.
I think that's great advice. I think that's brilliant, Faye. I was having a conversation with another playwright, and some professional company paid to do her show, and she sent them the Dramatists Guild contract, and they said, what is this? And she was like, are you kidding me? And I think the Guild has been so essential. I know we use that contract, and what a great organization. And I had no idea you were so involved. Thank you.
Yeah, we don't ask for much. We want our name to appear wherever the script is. And by the way, I didn't mention the playwright of The Scribe, Jesse Bernstein in Philadelphia. And I always try to give that credit.
Right.
Because it didn't write itself.
No.
And usually it didn't write itself over a period of a couple of years, adding more for dreaming years. So it needs to be, people need to be acknowledged.
Agree completely. How about you, Moriah?
Yeah, I would say that it's 100% that. It's connections. It's all in putting yourself out there and getting to develop those relationships with people. The show that I am workshopping next week tearing out my hair is being workshopped at the studios of Key West. And that came about from me developing a relationship with the artistic director after developing a relationship with the director who brought me down there. And so it's just been one after the other, that those relationships are the fuel that will inspire, and that they will also help in the development to steer you on the right path, to make sure that you are telling your story in the right way and that it's getting conveyed to the audience in the way that you want it to be. Because I know for me, I often find myself doing a lot of checking in with my actors, doing a lot of checking in with myself to be like, am I on the right path? And so having those artists around me who I trust to give it the once over, to make sure that, yes, we're having the same conversation still, and that this is the way that we want it to go, or that the jokes are landing, that everybody is involved and feels like they've contributed something to that project.
Wonderful. Wonderful. And then the last question is, have small companies like Venus been of service to you along the way? And you may have touched on this already, but if you want to add in.
Decidedly, yes. And so, and in markets that are not huge theater markets or thought that way, I've had 4 productions in Dayton, Ohio, and one director directed 3 times the same play.
Wow.
I want to give him some kind of annuity, as he's given me one. But yes, there's no such thing as an audience that's too small. Yes, we'd like to make our nut. We'd like to be sure that we're getting as many people as possible. But I think another thing COVID has taught us is that the numbers are not something to be concerned about, and other than, not being able to pay everybody. But it's about who you reach. And so what was interesting many years ago, my son is now actually this week 46. When he was about 20 or 21, I was complaining at a preview I didn't get the house that I thought I would get. And he said, don't count the house. He said, count the people who walk up to you afterward and say you changed their life. And I went, who are you? That is the most beautiful thing you could have said. And it has been my mantra ever since. And when I, either in my own work or work that I produce, I want to know that something that happened while they were in the dark, sitting because it was something that I worked on, has really given them a new outlook, and have the experience of sharing that with other people without a word ever being spoken. And you're just feeling the wheels going, or I never thought about it that way, or whatever it is that they do. They suspend judgment and they just take it in. So yes, small theaters, groups that aren't even theaters. When a church decides that it's going to host a reading or a production, or and I'm a small theater, so I hope we've done that for people. That
Gotcha.
Although I tend not to do work in development because I'm a very small staff of 1, and so I don't have time to do the dramaturgy that I would normally do, but I'll know it when I see it, and I often do unpublished work for a number of reasons. I want people to understand that the brand is about outstanding work and not coming because you know the name of the writer.
Yeah.
Or you've heard of it.
Right.
It's funny.
That helped me, and I'm trying to pass it on.
It's funny that you had that conversation with your son, because that's very similar to what I had to tell myself in the first play that I wrote, where I was so anxious. I was like, everybody's going to hate it. It's not going to go over well. And I was like, this is about toxic and unhealthy relationships. If you can reach one person, then that's all that matters. And I was so just overwhelmed when I had cast members come back to me and say that their friends actually left abusive relationships after seeing that show. And I was just floored. I was like, wow, this work telling these stories has power. And yes. I mean, I would not be here at all without different community theaters that have given me the opportunity to showcase my work. Little Theater of Norfolk for sure, Zyder's American Dream Theater, the studios of Key West, San Diego Fringe Festival. Yeah, I'm so thankful.
Yes.
And the other thing is that small theaters offer, just by definition, intimacy.
Yes.
That if we're going to hash out really huge human issues, we're better to do it, but in a place than in a place that you feel like you can reach out and touch the actors. And it's funny because one of the plays, my most produced play is called The Interview, and it takes place on the day before a volunteer is going to interview a Holocaust survivor for her testimony. That play has been done almost 40 times around the country. And very often it's done in spaces with maybe 40 or 50 chairs. And there was one time when Bracha, the character, has to get the coffee into the tea, she doesn't serve coffee, into her kitchen, and she's backing into the door to open it. And this man said, I nearly got out of my chair to open the door for her. And I'm thinking, glad you didn't follow up on that impulse, but it should feel like that when you're doing work that is intimate, to also have the intimacy, because the opposite can happen. I saw the Gin Game with wonderful actors. It was Julie Harris and Christopher Dern. No, that's not his name. Durang.
Oh, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, they played the couple. They were on the stage at the State Theater, which is a couple thousand seats. And so there's no way of an intimate play like that really holding the whole stage and holding all the people that are sitting around. And so there is room for intimate theater with intimate stories. And I think that is, I wouldn't do Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat on a 25 foot stage. But you know what I'm saying? These things are almost written for these smaller stages, and that's where they belong. There's a reason they were written in an intimate way.
Yeah. Amy, I feel like we have volumes of stories in our little 30-seat house. Do you want to jump in and share any from Venus? I know I have mine.
Well, I mean, working in that intimate space, just like, and having my very first time actually working in that space on our 16-foot round stage, I came out to sit on opening night, and I sat down, and there was a gentleman like right next to me, and I was like, oh, what have I gotten myself into? But I just know, talking to audiences afterwards, and how like they really felt, they just feel like they're in the room. They feel like they're a part of it. Their energy is part of what we do, and it's just magical, really.
Yeah, that's really what it's about. And before we got into the space, I was doing a solo show in '99, I think, and I had this monologue I would do where the character forgave her father at the gravesite, and then you find out he's not really dead. She just chose a random gravesite because she needed closure. And it was the back of a bar, and at 10 o'clock there was always the drunk lady, and I never knew it was the same lady or just random, like if the pitch just went up at 10 o'clock on whoever was there. I didn't know. And sometimes people mistook my performance space for the bathroom, so I would be doing this monologue, be like, oh, sorry, and then they'd leave, and there's a big wall of windows behind me, so dogs would be shitting and people would be big, and I'm like, stay focused, and so sometimes there'd be 3 people there, and I was just like doing it. And this regular was there, and then I came in the next week because I just did it on weekends, and the bartender said, what did you do to him? And I was like, oh my God, what did I do? He goes, he's usually in here every night, and he hasn't come in all week. And I'm like, great, like, way to build audience, Deb. And so I start the show again, and he's sitting in the front row. So it's a 2-act, of course, with 8 characters that goes on for it. So I'm like, I go through the whole show. And then after, I'm like, what's going on? How you doing? What's up? And he goes, when I saw you do that monologue, I got to thinking. And I was like, really? And he said, yeah. He says, when I came out of the closet, my whole family estranged from me. And I had a daughter who was 2, and she's about 23 now, and I haven't seen her since. And when I watched you do that monologue, I thought, maybe she forgave me. And so now I've been thinking, I think I might look her up. And I was like, I think that's a great idea. And then months go by, the show is closed. I just dropped by the bar to say hi. And I'm like, where is so-and-so? Like, where is he? And they go, oh, he's on vacation in Hawaii with his daughter.
Oh,
I was just like, whoa. And there's so many stories like that where you're performing for so few people, but you have no idea what kind of impact.
No idea. And I had a wonderful story, again, a small theater in Dayton. The producer, and this is during COVID, sent me a long sleeve t-shirt with I have it here, the name of the theater emblazoned on it. And I got back to Cleveland after the winter or whatever. At the end of the year, I sent him a note at the holidays, hoping he had, dealt with whatever he had dealt with that attracted him to this play. And I said, I just want you to know that was the only new article of clothing I got in all of 2021 or 2020, whatever year it was. He said, would you like me to send you something else? I said, no, that's fine. I just wanted to let you know that, it has that extra special meaning because I didn't need anything for a whole year. But that you don't get from a Lort company. And those connections are every bit as valuable when all is said and done. Those are the ones that you kind of hold close.
yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. I have some more things I want to ask you. Do you mind if we talk about a few more things?
I have nothing on. I mean, I do, but
I would like some feedback, actually, because this is my 4th session now. And I just wanted to ask what I can do to set you up for more success. I'm wondering what it makes sense. I know, Faye, you don't do media stuff, but like if I made a Frozen Woman Facebook group so you could talk to each other.
Gosh, yeah, that'd be amazing.
I didn't want to be, I don't know if I'm being invasive or not invasive because I'm dealing with 76 people and this is the first time I'm seeing your faces. So I'm like, what's working, what's not. So any kind of feedback you have for me, I would greatly appreciate on what I can do to assist you, to help you in any way. So connection seems to be a big theme.
Yeah.
I can set
I've really enjoyed listening to your story, Faye, and your process and all of it. It's really beautiful and very inspiring. So I think that ability to connect, and the nice thing about a Facebook group is you can send out the invite and then the people who want to be a part of it will join, and then the people who don't can go about their business.
right.
I'll be with you in spirit. So there are, there are email group. I mean, there are email groups too.
Yeah.
So if I'm a Luddite and I'm probably considerably older than a lot of you writers, so I'm just stuck in my ways, but I would certainly always answer any call or email. But I have a theater company and I'm not even on social media. So that just tells you how set I am on that. But yeah, whatever.
I would say you're in the majority age range.
Really? Okay. Yeah, that's possible. But they came along more quickly with the technology than I did.
Yeah.
Are you there? Can you hear me?
You see some of these videos I'm getting. It's like, can you? And one of my playwrights, I said, I just need your to sign your release. She's like, I can't do it. Can I just mail it to you? I guess I can't participate. I'm like, it's fine. You can mail it to me. It's okay. No, you're not alone at all. You're not alone at all.
Yeah.
But I could still make a closed group on Facebook. And as you say, it's sort of self-regulating. I just don't want to bombard everybody too much on email,
Yeah.
And
I'm fine with email too. It just like for email, it's very much informational for me. It's a lot more difficult for me to connect through email. I don't know why.
right.
Okay.
All right.
Not impossible.
Or we can share on that what our websites are, because probably everybody has that.
I
And
have
they can
bios with all the websites, so I could just send you the bios of everybody, and you can choose to reach out or not.
Something like that.
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm so glad to have you in this anthology. It's a whole new world for me. So thank you for trusting it, and really excited about it. Amy, anything else you want to say?
No, it's just fabulous to meet both of you, and I'm so excited for this anthology to come out. And yeah. That's it.
Anything?
Was there uniformity in the way people wrote their bios? Because I just did whatever the sentence was that you sent that, I've had plays done. And and when I read what Moriah wrote, I was like, oh, that makes more sense.
That was my artist statement.
There's no
Okay.
conformity whatsoever. I can't.
Okay, because I was just thinking if I had to, put a few words together, I probably wouldn't be, the prize thing or anything like that. It would be where my heart is. But that was just something that I wondered. I mean, so you probably had like half and half where people
just a
did.
big mix of different ideas.
Okay.
Yeah. And my focus is so not on that so much.
Right. And it's only a couple of sentences anyway, as I recall.
Yeah, informally, I could just send it out to everyone so you know who the other is in reach. But yeah. Okay. All right. Well, thank you both, and sending you all the love. Break all the legs, Moriah. 3 projects at once.
Exciting times. They really are. And I'm thrilled for you.
Yes.
And I also think, I know one of the reasons I started a theater company was to quit worrying about if anybody's going to do my work. And I didn't start this as a vanity project. I've done over 50 shows, and I think I've done 3 of mine in that time. So it's about how I wanted to be treated.
Yes.
And that's what we do. So it's been really good.
Love that.
Yeah.
Yes. All right.
Thank you for asking us.
Yes. Thanks for doing it. I'm going to sign
Great
off.
Lakes.
You enjoy your weekend.
Thank you. It was so nice to meet you all.
You too.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Take care.